Something is unfolding at the US-Canada border, and it's not what anyone expected. While the public stays distracted by political theater and headline-chasing chaos, behind the scenes a bold new strategy is taking shape, one that challenges long-held assumptions and exposes the fragility of what used to be one of the quietest, most cooperative border zones in the world. At the center of it all is a figure known for reshaping norms and rewriting rules, not with whispers in back rooms, but with action. And now, those actions are shaking Ottawa to its core. The northern border has long operated under a kind of mutual trust. Agreements were loose, oversight minimal, and enforcement sporadic. But that's no longer acceptable in this emerging vision of American sovereignty. There's a new understanding being imposed. Borders are more than lines on a map. They are points of control. Whoever controls them dictates the flow of everything that matters: goods, people, ideas, and influence. It started quietly. Increased scrutiny, questions about the real flow of dangerous substances, a focus on fentanyl, which data shows enters primarily through other means, but the narrative stuck. Security measures began escalating on both sides. Drones, drug-sniffing dogs, more patrols. New policies weren't announced with great fanfare, they simply began. The result? A sudden pressure point for Canada, which had to respond quickly and without its usual air of sovereignty. Trade tensions added more weight. Tariffs designed not just to punish, but to exert leverage began bringing in billions daily. Not theoretical numbers, real, measurable cash that could be turned into negotiating power. America was no longer waiting for polite meetings or long-delayed agreements. It was acting. And in acting, it began to expose the gaps in Canada's systems, gaps long ignored under the belief that things at the northern border were just fine. The view has shifted. There is no longer such a thing as isolated issues. Immigration, smuggling, trade imbalances, public spending, they're now seen as connected, part of a system that has been manipulated and mismanaged. Loopholes in trade agreements are no longer being overlooked. Flows of foreign goods that once entered easily are now under intense inspection. Canada's leadership, used to slow negotiations and vague commitments, has found itself facing something it wasn't prepared for: execution without delay. New surveillance systems are already online. Border crossings that once took minutes are now scrutinized at a level previously reserved for high-risk zones. Intelligence sharing has intensified. Areas that once relied on goodwill now operate under real-time monitoring. And beyond the border, Trump's strategy is forcing difficult conversations inside Canada, ones about sustainability, responsibility, and hard limits. One example is the federal retirement system. Projections show that the cost of supporting Canada's aging population is set to skyrocket. Billions more will be needed to sustain the old age security program. For years, this issue simmered quietly beneath the surface, but now it's being dragged into the open. With increased tariffs cutting into trade stability and American economic pressure rising, the cracks in the system are showing, and organizations inside Canada are beginning to recommend controversial fixes, like asking wealthier retirees to delay collecting benefits to preserve the fund. None of this is happening in a vacuum. As enforcement on the U.S. side increases, questions arise about how long Canada can afford to operate under old assumptions. Trump's border policies have revealed something uncomfortable. Many of Canada's problems stem not just from external forces, but internal denial. Programs built decades ago under very different conditions are being stretched thin. Financial models no longer hold, and foreign policy is now being dictated by economic muscle rather than diplomacy. Accountability is being forced. Look at how Ottawa has handled individuals returning from extremist groups overseas. Quiet repatriation efforts with over $200,000 spent to bring back citizens who had aligned themselves with dangerous ideologies. These were not minor relocations. They were controversial, expensive operations billed directly to taxpayers, carried out in silence with little public input or scrutiny. This isn't just about poor optics. It's about a lack of consequence and an unwillingness to confront the bigger picture. Now compare that with the approach from the U.S. Border enforcement is not just tighter, it's strategic. Detainees are held based on evidence, and investigations are linking criminal backgrounds to border crossings with precision. While Canadian officials are still framing these detentions as overreach or public relations missteps, the data reveals a much more deliberate reality. This is not chaos, it's correction. And this isn't just about catching smugglers or cracking down on illegal immigration. It's about reestablishing authority, ensuring that the people making the rules are also the ones enforcing them. Political ideologies aside, the shift is working. The border is no longer treated as a forgotten policy issue, it's become a central pillar of strategy, economics, and national identity. Public safety is no longer a slogan. It's being turned into real-world checkpoints, policies, and actions. Every inspection, every drone flight, every detained shipment now sends a signal. The rules have changed. If Canada wants to maintain its side of the deal, it has to adapt, because the era of one-sided tolerance is over. Critics say it's too aggressive. They argue that this tight grip could fracture relations and hurt commerce. But for those driving the policy, the response is simple. It's better to deal with short-term discomfort than long-term decay. And the message to Ottawa is equally clear. Fix the issues or be prepared for them to be fixed from the outside. From tariffs that bleed leverage out of every trade meeting to an unblinking eye on every crossing, the shift in strategy has made its mark. The border is no longer invisible. It is defined, guarded, and reasserted. And while other nations still rely on trust and treaties, the U.S. is now relying on control, real control. This is a new era of governance where action trumps announcements and results replace rhetoric. The borders are no longer symbolic, they are real and they matter. And those who underestimate that reality will find themselves playing catch-up to a movement that has already moved on.